Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And I had a viewer this week, well, within the last 7 days, that asked me to put a video together explaining the differences and the interactions and the similarities and the connections and everything else between darkness, Darkvision, and all of the different darkness effects. So I have put this video together, and it is aptly titled Darkness, Darkvision, and Darkness Effects Explained. So we are going to go through all of this. We're going to talk about all of the different terms and conditions that apply to this. We're going to talk about all the spells. We're going to talk about all the species/races. And we're going to talk about all the classes that have touch points basically with darkness or dark vision or a different kind of vision or darkness effects. So let's get into it. And before I begin, I just want to put out there, it'd be great, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share this video, hit that notification bell, all that jazz. All right, so on to the next thing. So I put this little graphic together, and this all starts, and we're going to go through all these terms from the D&D Beyond website, but I put these terms, these are the basic terms that come down to this, and I wanted to highlight heavily obscured, darkness, and the blindness condition, because darkness and heavily obscured are not conditions, but blindness is a condition. Heavily obscured is an overall entity. It is an overall term that defines a whole set of different things that can cause blindness. But if you are heavily obscured, you have the blindness condition as long as you are within the area that is heavily obscured. So heavily obscured could be fog. It could be pouring rain. It could be heavy snow. It could be darkness. So darkness is a subset of heavily obscured. Now, all darkness is heavily obscured. Not all heavily obscured is darkness. So there are certain things that will allow you to see in darkness, but those same things, like dark vision, will not allow you to see in everything that is heavily obscured. So if we've got a black inky cloud of gas that is not darkness, it's dark, but it is not the same thing as darkness in the terms of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, both of them result in the blindness condition. So that is kind of the base from where I want to go. And from there, we are going to talk about the problem and the solution. All right, so this is the problem. The interaction between darkness and dark vision is confusing because of all the different kinds of darkness vision and darkness/vision interactions. And there's a lot. There's actually different kinds of darkness, or there's darkness that has different effects. There are a lot of different kinds of vision, and there are many different interactions between these two, and they are very confusing. The solution that I have come up with is you should treat each type of darkness individually. That is, the source of the darkness is itself the individual thing, and you should only look at that and that only. And then each type of vision also should be defined individually. There are many different kinds of vision, and they each are their own thing. Dark vision is its own thing, and you should not try to apply it with a wide brush to everything else. Only apply dark vision and the rules that apply to dark vision to dark vision. Not to true sight, not to devil sight. Devil sight, and we're going to talk about this, but devil sight is not dark vision. Okay? Devil sight allows you to see in the dark, but it is not dark vision. And they're very clearly defined within the rules. So that's what we're going to talk about first. So here are our basic terms. We're going to go through each one of these from the D&D Beyond site. Heavily obscured, darkness, dark vision, dim light, lightly obscured, blinded condition, because that is the condition that most of these result in, blind sight, and true sight. There's 3 different types of vision on this list, these come from the rules, dark vision, blind sight, and true sight. They're all different. They're all individual. Heavily obscured is its own thing and can be distinct from darkness. Darkness results in heavily obscured, okay, but it is its own thing as well, as is lightly obscured. So we're going to talk about all that, and many of them result in the blinded condition. All right, so this is the problem. The interaction between darkness and dark vision is confusing because of all the different kinds of darkness vision and darkness/vision interactions. And there's a lot. There's actually different kinds of darkness. Or there's darkness that has different effects. There are a lot of different kinds of vision, and there are many different interactions between these two. And they are very confusing. The solution that I have come up with is you should treat each type of darkness individually. That is, the source of the darkness is itself the individual thing, and you should only look at that and that only. And then each type of vision also should be defined individually. There are many different kinds of vision, and they each are their own thing. Dark vision is its own thing, and you should not try to apply it with a wide brush to everything else. Only apply dark vision and the rules that apply to dark vision, not to true sight, not to devil sight. Devil sight, and we're going to talk about this, but devil sight is not dark vision. Okay? Devil sight allows you to see in the dark, but it is not dark vision. And they're very clearly defined within the rules. So that's what we're going to talk about first. So here are our basic terms. We're going to go through each one of these from the D&D Beyond site. Heavily obscured, darkness, dark vision, dim light, lightly obscured, blinded condition, because that is the condition that most of these result in, blind sight and true sight. There's 3 different types of vision on this list. These come from the rules, dark vision, blind sight, and true sight. They're all different. They're all individual. Heavily obscured is its own thing and can be distinct from darkness. Darkness results in heavily obscured, okay, but it is its own thing as well, as is lightly obscured. So we're going to talk about all that, and many of them result in the blinded condition. Here is the first term that we have on our list, and that is heavily obscured. So it says you have the blinded condition while trying to see something in a heavily obscured space. See also blinded, darkness, and Chapter 1 exploration. Now, I hate, I'm going to complain a little bit here. I hate the way that the new Player's Handbook is set up. The old Player's Handbook, the 2014 Player's Handbook, had all of this stuff in very succinct sections within the Player's Handbook. All of this stuff is in a glossary at the end of the book, which I can't stand. But it is there. It is in alphabetical order. I'll give them that, but it takes a while just to find out where some of this stuff is. It's not buried in the text of the book, or it's only highlighted and you have to go back to this glossary to see it. So heavily obscured is going to be the base the first term that we're talking about. That's that one right there. The next term we're going to talk about is darkness. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Here's darkness. An area of darkness is heavily obscured. Okay, and then it tells you to see heavily obscured. So darkness is a kind of heavily obscured or heavy obscurity. It is a kind of it, but not all heavily obscured is darkness. Remember that. So heavily obscured says if you're looking at something within a space, or you're in it, which means you're looking at it, then you have the blinded condition, okay? So the next term we're going to talk about here is dark vision, which is the next one down. There it is right there. Dark vision says, if you have dark vision, you can see in dim light with a specified range as if it were bright light. And in darkness, and we already said what darkness was heavily obscured. And in darkness within that range as if it were dim light. We're going to talk about what dim light does. So if you are in an area of darkness and have dark vision, or you're looking at an area of darkness and you have dark vision, you can see through it as if it were dim light. Finally, you discern colors in the darkness as shades of gray, and then it says, see Chapter 1, Exploration. So what is the next term we're going to talk about? The next term we're going to talk about, of course, is dim light right here. So remember, if you have dark vision and you are in or looking at an area of darkness, you see it as dim. And an area with dim light is lightly obscured. So that's different than heavily obscured. And of course it says, see also lightly obscured. So we're getting kind of this cascade of effects, cause and effect, and they come down. So the next term we're going to talk about is lightly obscured. So let's go to that. That's down a little bit. And here it is right here. And it says you have disadvantage on wisdom perception checks. So if you have dark vision and you're in the dark, you're in darkness or you're looking in darkness, you have disadvantage on perception checks to see something in a lightly obscured space. Okay. See also dim light. So we already looked at that. So those two things connect to each other. And like I said, that's why I have this right here. The reason I have this is these things are connected. Heavily obscured is connected to darkness because darkness is it is a subset of heavily obscured. Darkness causes blindness. However, there are other kinds of heavily obscured that cause blindness too. So you can see that. And I can make one of these that's very similar for dim light or lightly obscured. So dim light is a kind of lightly obscured, and it results lightly obscured and dim light both result in disadvantage on perception checks. Okay, so that's lightly obscured. Let's talk about the blinded condition, because this is what happens if you don't have dark vision and you're in darkness, or you are in heavily obscured and do not have a way of seeing through. So here's the blinded condition. While you have the blinding condition, you experience the following effects. You cannot see and automatically fail any ability check that requires sight, which is like perception. You also can't target things. Attacks affected. Attack rolls against you have advantage. That is, if they can see you. So in other words, if you do not have dark vision and are in darkness, then you are blinded because it's heavily obscured. And let's say something outside of that darkness does have dark vision and is looking at you, and it's within the range of their dark vision, they will have advantage on their attack roll. And you have disadvantage on your attack rolls. So that only applies if you know where something is. Otherwise, you just fail miserably. And with spells especially, many of them say a creature you can see. Because this says you cannot see, you cannot target creatures with a spell, particularly ones that require a saving throw. For ones that require a roll to hit, you need to know that the creature is there first in a square, and then even if you know that it's there, you have disadvantage. If it moves out of that square and you can't pinpoint where it is, meaning you can't get a perception check to figure out where it moved because it moved really silently, and you're going to have disadvantage on those perception checks because you can't use your sight, then you are not going to be able to target that creature. Okay, so our next term that we're going to talk about here is blind sight, which is a different kind of sight other than dark vision. So here is blind sight. If you have blind sight, you can see within a specific range. So you'll normally see blind sight like 30 feet, 60 feet, whatever. You can see within a specific range without relying on physical sight. Within that range, you can see anything that is not behind total cover, even if you have the blinded condition or are in darkness. Moreover, in that range, you can see something that has the invisible condition. Okay, so the first part of this, that within the range you can see anything, even if you have the blinding condition. That part covers all heavily obscured, all of it. Because remember, heavily obscured says you have the blinded condition. I don't know why they needed to put darkness there, but they did. They put darkness, so, and you also can see things that are invisible. I think or are in darkness is covered by the blinding condition because darkness is heavily obscured and it results in the blinded condition. So there is that. And it is separate from dark vision because blind sight allows you to see invisible creatures. It allows you to see in all, it's basically to ignore the blinded condition. And not all heavily obscured is darkness. So it allows you to absorb anything that causes the blinded condition. Okay, our next term on this is true sight. So let's take a look at that. True sight is its own sight, which is separate from dark vision and blind sight. So if you have true sight, your vision is enhanced within a specific range. Within that range, your vision pierces through the following: darkness. You can see in normal and magical darkness. So when they use these particular terms like this is what confuses people. They just need to say darkness. They don't need to say non-magical or normal darkness and magical darkness. They're darkness. Darkness is heavily obscured and it causes blindness. They don't need to differentiate between normal and magical. There really is no difference whatsoever at all. Dark vision allows you to see in magical darkness, period. There are specific things that disallow dark vision, but remember I said you have to treat each thing individually. True sight also allows you to see creatures and objects that have the invisible condition. Visual illusions appear transparent to you, and you automatically succeed on saving throws against them. We're going to talk about illusions, because illusions are super powerful. Transformations, you discern the true form of any creature or object that you have seen that has been transformed by magic. And you can see into the ethereal plane. See also Appendix A, transitive planes. So, true sight, which is different than blind sight. So blind sight covers the first two, darkness and invisible. True sight then adds illusions, transformations, and you can see into the ethereal plane. So blind sight allows you to ignore the darkness condition, and they can just take the normal and magical darkness part out. It just should say you can see in darkness. That's really all it should say. It shouldn't say normal and magical darkness. That's part of the confusion that has happened with so many people. All right, that was the last condition that we are going to talk about. So now we've gone through the problem, we've gone through the solution, we've looked at the base, which is heavily obscured, darkness, and the blinded condition. We've also looked at and defined all of the basic terms. So let's talk about now spells, and we're going to start basically from Minor Illusion, which is a cantrip, all the way down to Maddening Darkness. I excluded Programmed Illusion a little bit out of this, but this goes from cantrips all the way up to the highest level spell, which I think Maddening Darkness is an 8th level spell, but we'll look. And we're going to look at each one of these, and we need to treat each one of these spells individually for what it does, okay? So let's take a look at that. Minor Illusion. So the thing about Minor Illusion is you can create any sound or image within a 5-foot cube. So you could create a heavily obscured area. And this heavily obscured area is not darkness. It is an illusion. So I could create an area of thick blue smoke in a 5-foot cube that puts an individual in, it thinks is thick blue smoke. They will not know that it is an illusion unless they take the study action to examine the sound or image. The creature then can determine it is an illusion with a successful intelligence investigation check against my DC. Or they could just step out of it. So that's another thing. But they may not know that it's only a 5-foot cube. So this makes this cantrip extremely powerful because you could put something in a heavily obscured area that they cannot see through because you're defining it as heavily obscured. So they would need to have blind sight which would allow them to see in a heavily obscured area, but maybe their blind sight wouldn't work because this is an illusion and they think that they are seeing it. And lastly, true sight would just see through it. But dark vision would not affect this whatsoever at all. Fog Cloud, a first level spell, is one of these spells that causes an area to be heavily obscured because it's fog. It is a opaque fog. You could make the fog, I guess, any color that you want. Creates a 20-foot radius sphere of fog centered on a point within range. And it lasts for the duration, which is an hour. Now, this is concentration, and you can't really move it. A strong wind will disperse it. But you can increase the radius by 20 feet for each spell level above 1. It's heavily obscured. And remember, the only things that see through heavily obscured are blind sight and true sight, not dark vision. Our next spell in this series that can cause troubles with vision and dark vision and darkness and all that is Silent Image. Now, this one has a range of 60 feet, and it's a 15-foot cube. And again, it essentially does the same thing that Minor Image does. It's a first-level spell, so you could create a 15-foot cube of blue fog that causes the heavily obscured condition, or the heavily obscured definition to come into play, which would cause the blind condition. And with this one, you can move it to any spot within range. So you could continue to move this as an action as long as the creature doesn't know that it's an illusion. So physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion since things can pass through it. A creature that takes a study action to examine the image can determine that it is an illusion with a successful investigation. So you could continuously do this if they can't figure out that it is an illusion. And I would contest that just turning the lights out would not demonstrate a physical interaction with the illusion. You could just make the illusion that there's no lights. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that you can do with this, but this is one of the reasons why illusions are so powerful. Second level spell, Blindness, Deafness. It lasts for a minute. It does not require concentration, so keep that in mind. It has a very long range of 120 feet, and if a creature fails a Constitution saving throw, it has the blinded condition or the deafened condition, your choice, but it can get the blinded condition. Now, this spell does not work on things that have blind sight because they are immune to the blinded condition or they ignore it. But this will work on everything else. And it essentially is the same thing as just putting a permanent heavily obscure on something. But ignore that. It's treated as its own entity, the Blindness, Deafness spell, and it applies the blinded condition. All right, this is one of the ones that confuses everybody because there's a word in here they didn't really need to use. It is implied. And the spell is Darkness. A second level spell, lasts for 10 minutes. It does have the concentration effect on it, so you're going to have to concentrate on it. It says, for the duration, and here's the word, magical darkness. Well, we know it's magical. It's a spell. And that confuses everybody. It's just darkness. It's darkness that is cast by a spell. So it says magical darkness spreads from a point within range, which is 60 feet, in a 15-foot radius sphere. Dark vision, and now again, this is where I want you to treat each one of these individually. Dark vision cannot see through it. And non-magical light, things like torches and non-magical torches and non-magical lanterns cannot illuminate it. This thing with dark vision is unique to the spell dark vision or darkness, and you need to treat the spell darkness individually, separate from everything else. Forget the magical darkness. It's just darkness that is cast by a spell, in which dark vision does not work. That's it. End of story. There are other spells that cause darkness that dark vision can see in, because it is just darkness. Doesn't matter that it's magical darkness. So, then it says, alternatively, you can cast a spell on an object that isn't being worn or carried, So, if this spell overlaps with an area of bright light or dim light, created by a spell of level 2 or lower, like light, that spell is dispelled. It's gone. And non-magical illumination does not work within darkness, okay? But again, treat this individually. It is a special kind of darkness in which dark vision does not work. Blind sight will work, true sight will work, because darkness creates darkness, which creates a heavily obscured area, which gives the blinded condition. And if you have blind sight, you ignore that. But ignore the word magical in front of darkness. That should not be there. I don't know why they put that there. It just confuses everything. It is magical because it is a spell. We understand that. There are some advantages to casting dark vision, even if you're casting it on a creature who already has dark vision. Okay, so it's a second level spell, lasts for 8 hours, no concentration, and it says, for the duration, a willing creature you touch has dark vision with a range of 150 feet. Normally creatures, and we're going to get into the creatures, they have a range of 60 feet. This is a dark vision has a range of 150 feet. So it's much longer. And again, this is dark vision, so it does not work in the darkness spell because the darkness spell says it doesn't work. It will work in other kinds of darkness that are cast by spells, but not the darkness spell. And again, magical darkness has nothing to do with this. I wanted to talk about the spell Daylight because it does have specific effects on different kinds of darkness. So, it's a 60-foot radius sphere. It's bright light. And then it sheds dim light for another 60 feet. So 60 feet out from the center, bright. 60 feet out from that edge to 120 feet, dim light. So the spell can be cast on an object that isn't worn or carried, la la la, and it emanates. And it's this last sentence that I really want to emphasize for this video. If any of this spell's area overlaps with an area of darkness, doesn't say magical darkness, just says darkness, created by a spell of level 3 or lower. The darkness spell is a level 2 spell. Okay, now there are some questions about what happens if I cast it with a 5th level slot. Is it a 5th level spell? I would contest that a warlock that casts the spell darkness that's 9th level is casting a 5th level darkness. So a 3rd level daylight would not work. But there are no upcasting of these spells. So, you make the call on what you think. But this one will get rid of the darkness spell, which is its own thing. And notice it doesn't differentiate between magical darkness and non-magical darkness. It just gets rid of darkness created by a spell of level 3 or lower. And other darkness, just regular darkness, is just gone completely. Now, heavily obscured, if you're in an area of heavy fog, like fog cloud, daylight's not going to do anything. That's just heavily obscured. Remember, darkness, all darkness is heavily obscured. Not all heavily obscured is darkness, okay? All right, I want to talk about the legacy version of Hunger of Hadar, and then we're going to talk about the 2024 version of Hunger of Hadar. It's hard to say, because we want to look at specifically some things that they changed in the wording. So, you open a gateway to the dark between the stars. They use the word dark too much in here. It confused a lot of people. A 20-foot radius sphere of blackness. Blackness is not darkness. It's a descriptive word. It's there for flavor. And that really confused people. So darkness and bitter cold appear centered at a point within range. Lasts for the duration. The void is filled with a cacophony of soft whispers and slurping noises, la la la. No light, magical or otherwise, can illuminate the area, and creatures fully within the area are blinded. So note the word darkness does not appear here at all, meaning the daylight spell will not have any effect on this because it's not darkness. It's Hunger of Hadar 2014. And if you are in it, you are blinded. No light, magical or otherwise, can illuminate the area, but if you have dark vision and you're not in it, who cares? You can still see. So if it's dark around the Hunger of Hadar, then it's dark. But you, with Darkvision, you can see. So my contention is with Darkvision, you could see things within the Hunger of Hadar, but things in the Hunger of Hadar are blinded, which is different than darkness. They're just blinded. They have the blinded condition. Now, if they have blind sight, then they would just ignore the blindness, or if they had true sight. So let's talk about the 2014 version of this now. So this one says, you open a gateway to the far realm. Okay, that's different. A region infested with unspeakable horrors. A 20-foot radius sphere of darkness, not blackness, darkness, appears centered on a point within range. So that word darkness has meaning now. Darkness is darkness. It's caused by a spell, and it causes the heavily obscured term to happen, which imparts the blinded condition. Centered on a point within range and lasting for the duration. The sphere is difficult terrain. It's filled with whispers and slurping noises, la la la. No light, magical or otherwise, can illuminate the area, and creatures fully within it have the blinded condition. Now, this is darkness of a 3rd level spell. Does that mean that daylight will dispel it? Just like take care of the whole spell, because it is darkness. So that's a question. And then it says creatures fully within have the blinded condition. So again, if you cast Hunger of Hadar in a dark room, it causes darkness to appear in that dark room. Things inside the Hunger of Hadar have the blinded condition. So they're not seeing anything unless they have blind sight or they have true sight. Creatures outside of the Hunger of Hadar with Darkvision should be able to see within it as if it were dim light. So they could see creatures within the Hunger of Hadar who have the blinded condition. So that is a good explanation of that if you are ever wondering and ever got confused about it. Here's a major image. It's another one of our illusion spells. And this is a 20-foot cube within a 120-foot range. You can take the magic action to move it to any spot. The image appears at a spot you can see within range and lasts for the duration it seems real, including sound, smells, and temperature appropriate to the thing depicted, but it can't deal damage or cause conditions. So investigation action, study action, all that has to happen. Physical interaction with the image reveals it's an illusion for things that can pass through it. I would contend that you can pass through fog anyway, so it's not necessarily you're physically reacting with it. Whereas if you were to create the illusion of a 20-foot tall dragon and you pass through it, that's different. So you would have to study it and then take the investigation action. And until then, you would be heavily obscured, which gives you the blindness condition. And I almost forgot one of the most powerful spells in the game that is a 2nd level spell, Phantasmal Force, range of 60 feet, area of a 10-foot cube, and includes sound, temperature, and other stimuli, and they have to take a study action to examine it with an intelligence investigation check against your DC. If it succeeds, it realizes it's an illusion. So while it's affected, these are things in its mind. So you could make the creature blind. You could make them in a heavily obscured area, and there's nothing they could do about it. So this, again, is another one of these that is one of the very powerful forces. With this spell, you could actually make a 10-foot cube full of dark black tentacles that wrap themselves around the creature, restraining the creature and blinding the creature. So that is one of the ways that Phantasmal Force could be used. And it goes along with all of our vision and darkness and heavily obscured and all of that. Sleet Storm is pretty simple. 40-foot tall, 20-foot radius cylinder. Area is heavily obscured. This is an example of one of these things that causes the heavily obscured term to come into effect, but is not darkness. So things that are in it are going to be blind unless they have blind sight or true sight. Otherwise, Darkvision doesn't work in this because it's heavily obscured. So that's all we got to say about that. In addition to all of its other effects, Stinking Cloud, which is a 20-foot radius sphere of yellow gas, which is opaque, is heavily obscured, meaning You're not seeing in it unless you have blind sight or true sight. And it lingers, and you're not moving it, so it just stays there. So things getting out of it will not have the blinded condition anymore. Wall of Sand is kind of unique in that it's a wall, 30 feet long, 10 feet high, 10 feet thick. It blocks line of sight but not movement, and a creature is blinded while in the wall space. And then it has to spend a whole bunch of movement to move every foot. So if you put something in the wall, it's blinded. It's not heavily obscured. It's not dark. It's just blinded. So again, true sight, blind sight are the only things that will get through this. That's it. So blinded condition. Doomtide, we just went over this spell from Forgotten Realms, Heroes of Faerun. Great spell. Creates a 20-foot radius sphere of inky fog within range. The fog, and I wish they would use this word, the fog is magical darkness. We know it's magical. It is caused by a spell. They use the word inky fog, which implies heavily obscured, and it's not. It's darkness. So again, I like this spell, but this spell has some very confusing terminology. Inky fog, it's not fog. It's just darkness. And then they use the word magical. It's just darkness. So it lasts for a minute. It's concentration. It will be dispersed with a strong wind. It does move 10 feet away at the start of each of your turns. So you put it down. You could put something in the middle of it. The next round, it's going to move 10 feet away from you, and it's still going to be within it, but it'll be 10 feet closer to the edge. That's basically how that works. Or it could just move out. So I wish they hadn't used inky fog. That's flavor text. And I wish they hadn't used magical darkness. The word magical, also flavor text. I put Hallucinatory Terrain in here. You should talk to your dungeon master about this one. Great spell. Duration of 24 hours. Doesn't require concentration. It's a huge area of 150-foot cube. You could possibly change an area to look like a foggy moor or a foggy swamp or foggy hills, something like that where it's heavily obscured. Now, the tactile characteristics of the terrain are unchanged, so creatures entering the area are likely to notice an illusion. If the difference isn't obvious by touch, and I don't think you can really touch fog very easily, so a creature examining can take the study action to make an intelligence check. So talk to your DM about what you can do with Hallucinatory Terrain. It is a 4th level spell, so I contend you could probably create a foggy area. Shatter of Moil, we've gone over this. Great spell. It's for warlocks. Lasts for a minute. It's concentration. It's on self. Flame-like shadows wreathe your body until the spell ends, causing you to become heavily obscured to others. Meaning, blind sight or true sight are needed to see you, not dark vision. And then it's dim light within 10 feet of you into the darkness. So things can't see you and therefore they're blinded, even if they have dark vision, because it's heavily obscured, and they will have disadvantage to attack you. That's essentially the way that this works. They're going to know you're in a square, so it's easy to target you, but they will have disadvantage. It does a few other things. They'll have disadvantage to perception checks within 10 feet of you in the darkness, and then so on and so forth. But this is not darkness. It is heavily obscured. Cloudkill, like all the other fog cloud type spells, causes a fog. It's a yellow-green fog, 20-foot radius, and it is heavily obscured. So dark vision is no good. You need blind sight or true sight. And again, this is another one that moves 10 feet away. So heavily obscured. Again, remember to treat each of these individually. We're talking about Cloudkill and only Cloudkill and its connection to the term heavily obscured. The reason I bring in Jallarzi Storm of Radiance is because it imparts a specific condition. So 120-foot range, a 10-foot cylinder that is 40 feet high. While in this area, creatures have the blinded and deafened conditions, and they can't cast spells with verbal components. So they're just blinded. That's not heavily obscured. They're just blinded. But again, blind sight and true sight ignore the blinded condition. And then they're going to take some damage and things like that. That's basically it. Guards and Wards does a whole bunch of stuff. You're not going to be casting instant combat because it takes an hour to cast, but it does last for 24 hours. No concentration. And there are a couple of things that you can do. So you can fill, and it's a huge range, by the way, too. I mean, it's a 2,000 square foot floor space. So you touch your abode, and you basically can do a whole bunch of different stuff. So the one that I am interested in with this is the corridor one that says fog fills all the warded corridors. That is kind of mechanical and kind of flavor. The mechanical part of this is it says making them heavily obscured. So all of these corridors within the area of guards and wards they're heavily obscured. So you won't be able to see anything in them. And that's basically it. I picked out True Seeing because this is one of the very few ways that you can get True Sight. And we already went over True Sight. So the spell, no concentration, it lasts for an hour. And a willing creature you touch has True Sight with a range of 120 feet. And remember, we said True Sight ignores the blindness condition, allows you to see through illusions, allows you to see invisible creatures, allows you to see in the ethereal. True Sight, great. That's the ultimate vision. And this is one of the ways of getting it. So Mirage Arcana is like one of the ultimate illusion spells. However, you're not going to be casting it in combat because it takes 10 minutes to cast, but it does last for 10 days. And it includes audible, visual, tactile, and olfactory elements. So physically interacting with it doesn't really do anything. The only way to get around this is True Sight. And there's no studying it. So it just is. So this is one of those spells that you could be casting that it has a range of a mile. It's not going to be in combat, but you could set up some really good or really great, significant ambush sites with this one. Incendiary Cloud is the last like fog cloud type spell that we have. It starts with Fog Cloud, goes to Stinking Cloud, goes to Cloudkill, and then Incendiary Cloud, which does fire damage. However, what I want to point out is it creates this 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point within 150 feet, and that cloud is heavily obscured. Not dark, heavily obscured, meaning it will impart the blindness condition. And it lasts for the duration until it is moved by a strong wind, and it moves 10 feet away on each of your turns, just like all the others. Maddening Darkness is another one of these kind of confusing spells. It's an 8th level spell. It lasts for 10 minutes. It's concentration. It's a range of 150 feet. The first part of the text of this is flavor text, and that's what you need to take out of it. Magical darkness spreads from a point you choose within range to fill a 60-foot radius until the spell ends. All we need to know out of there is that the effect of the spell fills a 60-foot radius sphere. That's it. All the other stuff, all that is flavor. The next couple of sentences are the mechanical part of this. So the darkness, not the magical darkness, we don't care about that word. The darkness spreads around corners, so that 60-foot radius effect will go around corners. And then a creature with Darkvision cannot see through this darkness. Now, this is a Xanthar's Guide to Everything spell, so it hasn't translated over into 2024, so the word darkness is not highlighted here, but it is a condition. And it does say a creature with Darkvision cannot see through this darkness. This is individually unique to Maddening Darkness, just like this exact same sentence is individually unique to the darkness spell, but not darkness itself. It only applies to Darkvision and not other types of vision. And we're going to kind of talk about a few of those things. It says non-magical light as well as light created by spells of 8th level or lower cannot illuminate the area. And because this is darkness, it doesn't really say that it's going to dispel anything. So, and then there's some damage that happens. But this is an individual type of darkness that affects creatures with Darkvision. So just remember that. Treat it individually. And here's the last illusion spell that we're going to talk about, and this is the programmed illusion. It is an action. It lasts until it's dispelled. It does not require concentration, range of 120 feet, is a 30-foot cube. And again, it has this physical interaction with the image, reveals it to be illusionary or illusory, but things can pass through it, or since things pass through it. But I contend again that physical interaction with fog is not actually possible, so you would need to study it to examine it. But again, you need to run that by your dungeon master to see if that is kosher or not. If you were making a 30-foot tall dragon, then I would say you could physically interact. That is something you could physically interact with, and yes, it would check the illusion if you put your hand through it. But again, illusions are quite powerful. All right, the next thing I want to point out are the race/species. All of these here, I'm going to read them out. They all have dark vision, and they only have dark vision. They don't have anything else other than dark vision, and it's all 60 feet. So Aasimar, Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Orc, Tiefling, Dhampir, all the Genasies, so air, earth, fire, water, Genasies all have dark vision. Bugbear, Deep Gnome, Goblin, Hobgoblin, Kobold, Sea Elf, Shatterkai, Shifter, Tabaxi, Triton, and Yuan-Ti all have dark vision. So if they are in darkness, not caused by the darkness spell or the spell Maddening Darkness, they will be able to see it. If it is darkness, if it is heavily obscured, that dark vision doesn't matter. And the last part of this video, we're going to look at class abilities that interact with or visions or darkness. So here they all are. I listed them all out. We got Barbarian, Path of the Wild Heart, Cleric, Light Domain, Druid, Wild Shape, Monk, Warrior of the Shadow, Ranger, Gloom Stalker, because somebody specifically asked me about Gloom Stalker, Warlocks, Devil Sight or Witch Sight, and the Wizard Divination School. So we're going to talk about each one of these individually. If you are a Path of the Wild Heart Barbarian at level 6, you gain one of the following options of your choice. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change your choice. And one of those options is the Owl, which gives you dark vision with a range of 60 feet. And if you already have dark vision, then it gives you a dark vision range of 120 feet. Or increases it by 60 feet. You could have a 30-foot dark vision and it could be 90 feet. So it increases it. But this is a way to get dark vision if you are a barbarian. I highlight the Light Domain Cleric because they have a particular ability that they can use with their channel divinity called Radiance of Dawn. As a magic action, you present your holy symbol and expend a use of your channel divinity to emit a flash of light in a 30-foot emanation that's around you only. I hate the fact that they use this word. Any magical darkness, such as that created by the darkness spell, in that area is dispelled. So you can't dispel non-magical darkness. So if a hallway is dark and you Radiance of Dawn, it's just a 6-second flash of light. It's not going to get rid of the darkness because you can't dispel that because it's just because there's an absence of light. So I really hate it when they use the word magical. It should just say it dispels darkness within that area. And it's implied that you're dispelling something because it's a spell. So any magical darkness, such as that created by a darkness spell, in that area is dispelled. So Maddening Darkness will be dispelled because it has darkness. That darkness is gone. So this does not have a level cap on it. It just is gone. So pretty powerful. So I bring up the Druid's Wild Shape because you could Wild Shape into creatures beasts that have dark vision, giving yourself dark vision. Pretty simple. If you don't have it, you can Wild Shape into something that gives it to you. If you already have it, then you're really not getting anything. So after looking at this particular subclass of the monk and going through all of this stuff on darkness and vision and light and all of that, I really find that I like the Warrior of Shadow. So You have learned to draw on the power of the Shadowfell, and you gain the following benefits. Darkness. You can expend 1 focus point to cast the Darkness spell without components. You can see within the spell's area when you cast it with this feature. So, it's the Darkness spell, which means Darkvision does not work inside the Darkness spell. However, it is a Darkness spell that is unique to the Warrior of the Shadow Darkness. Remember, treat each one of these things individually, and it allows you to see within the spell's area when you cast it with this feature. While the spell persists, you can move its area of darkness to a space within 60 feet of yourself at the start of each of your turns. And that is a free action, my friends, a free action. That does not cost you a bonus action. It is not a magic action. It's not an action of any kind. It just happens at the start of your turn, which means you can be in it with somebody else. And remember, darkness is a 15-foot radius. That's pretty big. So you could be in it and being able to see in your darkness spell. It has to be your. If somebody else casts a darkness spell, then you're not going to be able to see in it. But this one you can see in. So remember, treat everything individually. And you're going to be able to see it. You're going to have advantage because the thing in it is that can't see within that darkness is going to have the blinding condition. Again, you also gain dark vision within 60 feet. If you already have it, you increase the range by 60 feet. And you know the minor illusion spell, which is a cantrip. So you can do some different things with that. With Shadow Step, if you are entirely within dim light or darkness, like what you cast with your focus point, you can use a bonus action to teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also in dim light or darkness. You then have advantage on the next melee attack you make before the end of your current turn, like your unarmed strike. So you could throw down the darkness with a focus point, and you expend a focus point to cast the darkness spell. Expending focus points don't really use actions. Just put that out there. So you put the darkness down, which you can move at the beginning of each of your turns, and then you can teleport at 6th level, of course, into that darkness from where you are. Or if you're in dim light or darkness already. So you can just make sure that you're in dim light. It's pretty awesome. You have to use your bonus action for that, which is going to use your flurry of blows, but pretty awesome. And then you get the improved Shadow Step, and then Cloak of Shadows. So, I mean, this, just dealing with that is a pain, and I think it's pretty cool. Now, this is one of the things I was asked about specifically from one of my viewers, and it was about Umbral Sight and its interaction with darkness and dark vision and all that. So you gain dark vision with a range of 60 feet. If you already have dark vision, when you gain this feature, its range increases by 60 feet. That's pretty standard. You are also adept at evading creatures that rely on dark vision. While entirely in darkness, that's any kind of darkness, and remember, you have dark vision, you have the invisible condition to any creature that relies on dark vision to see you in that darkness, dark vision. Treat each thing individually. So dark vision is not Devil's Sight, and it is not Witch's Sight. It is dark vision. So if there's an orc that has dark vision and it's in darkness and you're in darkness, you are invisible to the orc with dark vision. I wish that they would have highlighted this like they highlight this, like with a hyperlink. But they didn't. They should have done that. The Warlock has 2 different ways of getting special sight. Devil's Sight, an invocation you could take at 2nd level, which is not dark vision. Let me repeat that. Treat each one of these things individually. Devil's Sight is not dark vision. It is Devil's Sight that allows you to do things. And that allows you to see normally in dim light and darkness, both magical and non-magical. I wish they wouldn't have. Who cares about that? It doesn't matter. Within 120 feet of yourself. Because Devil's Sight is not dark vision, it allows you to see in the darkness spell and in Maddening Darkness. The 2 different spells that are darkness that disallow the use of Darkvision. Devil's Sight is not Darkvision. And there's one other one here, and it's all the way down at the bottom, and we are going to scroll with it, and that is Witch's Sight, which is a level 15 invocation, and it gives you True Sight with a range of 30 feet. So True Sight, remember, let's highlight the little thing, darkness, and you can see in normal and magical darkness, you can see in darkness. Invisible creatures, you can see them. You can see through illusions, you can see transformations, and you can see into the ethereal plane. It's the ultimate true sight, or the ultimate sight, the ultimate vision. And the last one that I'm going to point out is the level 10 ability, the third eye of the Divination or Diviner Wizard, which you can increase your powers of perception. As a bonus action, choose one of the following benefits, which lasts until you start a short or long rest. Can't gain this feature until you use a short or long rest. You can get dark vision with a range of 120 feet. Just dark vision. Again, it's dark vision, so that means that it won't work in the darkness spell, but it is still dark vision with 120 feet, not a 60-foot range. So that is the video that I have for everyone. And I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that this helps explain a little bit about some of the problems and some of the solutions that have come from the confusion with the problem statement we have. The interaction between darkness and dark vision is confusing because of all the different kinds of darkness vision and dark/vision interactions. And I hope the solution where we treat each type of darkness individually and each type of vision should be defined individually. Hopefully that helps kind of untangle some of this confusion, and hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will catch everybody later.